About this film, Andrew Saris of The Village Voice says pure popcorn like this is hardly worthy of serious analysis. Fortunately, the stars have not lost their charm and authority. In the New York Times, Vincent Canby wrote that the film is so good-natured, so obviously aware of everything it's up to, even its own picturesque frauds, that I opt to go along with it. And Letterboxd user Meg Bichel calls it 1930s Uncut Gems. On this episode of Ruined Childhoods, we decide the fate of The Sting.
Sequel. Reboot. Which one will it be? It's the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
Greetings, Starfighters. Welcome to Ruined Childhoods. I am one half of your hosting team. My name is Dan. The other half over there is John. Say hi, John.
Dan. Hey, hi, Dan. How you doing?
You know, all things considered, John, I'd have to say I'm doing pretty well.
Okay. So here's how I'm going to get into this. So if you are a subscriber to the podcast, you'll notice that the last episode, The Candidate, and this episode, The Sting, are coming out back to back. Like, not just one sequentially after the other, but like The Sting very soon after The Candidate. And that's because we've had some setbacks due to the Pacific Northwest weather. I mean, the entire United States weather has been an absolute mess this past week, but in the Pacific Northwest, we faced very high winds and some ice and all sorts of craziness, and there was certainly a lot of property damage related to a number of those things, and Dan unfortunately faced a pipe bursting issue. So not cool. So Ruined Childhoods Studio, Seattle is out of commission for a bit.
Oh, it's sad. It's sad, but it, hopefully, not long into the new year, it will be back up and running better than ever.
Let's hope so.
But I'm still here. Here. Excited to talk about movies because all I've been talking about is insurance and claims and drywall and mold and everything else on the to-do list. So I'm really excited to just bullshit about The Sting and whatever else happens to come up. So
well, Dan, you said that you've been talking about claims. I have a claim for you. 2022's The Whale is the saddest movie you'll ever see, and also it is fantastic. That is a claim that I have for you.
Two things that I would not imagine things being any different.
Okay, you're not surprised.
All I needed to see was that first shot they released of Brendan Fraser, and I'm like, this is going, and I was basically thought to myself, I'm like, this is going to be the saddest movie ever, and it's also going to be really good, because not that this is what he does every time out, but Darren Aronofsky is really good at that. I think of The Wrestler.
Oh, well, The Wrestler for sure. Yeah, and that was very sad, but I feel like this one and you know what, I should watch The Wrestler again. It's been a while since I've seen that one. But for this, I think that just the way that Brendan Fraser portrays this character and the reasons why he is going through his hardships and the things that lead up to the events of this film and its ending, just really, really well done. And it was the saddest I've ever been in a movie theater. And it was one of those sadnesses that transcends tears. It's just like, oh my God, feel awful.
Your jaws dropped. Your jaw,
absolutely,
like gut punch. Okay,
absolutely.
So I'm curious. So what was the previous, like you say that, and for me, I think of, among a few other movies, I think of Boys Don't Cry.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
partially because recently I was compiling a list of my top 10 of 1999, and I'm like, you know what? I've seen Boys Don't Cry twice, but that movie is just like a gut punch. And I went to see it by myself, and I remember just walking out and just processing and like that movie really rocked me. So I guess what are some other movies that have left you after theatrical experience just kind of like, gobsmacked, I guess, emotionally?
Yeah. So I think that I get that that feeling in a to a lesser degree than The Whale, but certainly get it from a lot of the like docudramas that are about huge true injustices, thinking specifically about things like Spotlight. And I had a similar experience after watching She Said recently, the one that's about the Harvey Weinstein New York Times article. And a lot of those types of films, I mean, those are two that happen to take place in newsrooms, but a lot of those really hit me pretty hard. I had a similar thing with like Dark Water a couple years ago.
If I can add one actually to that list, and something that I just finished watching recently, as in within the last 24 hours, and had I seen it as a whole experience in the theater, would have definitely just been left gobsmacked, and that is the HBO miniseries Chernobyl, with fabulous actors. The cast is kind of led by Jared Harris. It's just amazing, and Emily Watson, who's always amazing, and Stellan Skarsgård, who is always amazing. So but it's a tremendous feat of both storytelling, is the HBO Chernobyl.
Yeah, I think that a lot of those real life, dramas that are taken from real life, and I don't know if I would necessarily say this about like a true crime docudrama where but certainly crimes are committed, but I think that when I think true crime, I think mostly like murders and things like that. But, these are much larger true crimes where it is, the entire Boston Catholic Church. And
it's conspiracies and conspiracies to conceal crimes and obstruction of justice.
So those are the ones. And I mean, when crimes are committed on such a large scale, that impact so many people personally, not necessarily, related to deaths, but, certainly, just complete injustices that ruin people's lives. That to me is like where it hits really, really hard. And, that's a kind of sad where, you watch a movie like that and you learn something about something that's really gone on or is going on, and you're just like, oh, I feel bad.
Well, because in these, you're talking about movies in which the victims are people who were either who were in some way, shape, or form deceived, misled, tempted anyway, but, kind of they did nothing wrong and are taken advantage of. And because of what happens, whatever it is, whether it's the abuse, covered in Spotlight, or the, nuclear contamination of Chernobyl, people who are just like, kind of doing their best and are living, innocent lives, their lives are forever altered based on a choice that they did not make. It was a choice made for them by people who do not suffer the consequences, which is a huge, huge, huge theme in Chernobyl. Which should not be surprising.
But Dan, that's the magic of cinema, and I classify Chernobyl as cinema. It is certainly cinematic storytelling.
Well, it's definitely not TV. it's HBO.
Yes, that is true.
I had a question for you. Speaking
What
of
even
cinema,
is TV anymore?
No, I don't actually. You know what? I mean, I would say TV is. I mean, right now it's like there's a very interesting, like, influence where TV has become, the great storyteller, and in the body of these miniseries, like, you don't have to go and watch 6 hours of Chernobyl. Watch it in doses. Anyway, speaking though of cinema, John, the Variety 100 greatest movies of all time list, of course, all these things are subjective. But that came out, and I know that there has been chatter about it, and how many have you seen? I think especially coming on the heels of the Sound and Vision list, right. which kind of, I don't know. I think a lot of people who know more than I do felt that was kind of chasing obscurity, trying to like spotlight more obscure
Spotlight.
films. Well, yeah, I don't know that Spotlight. It's well, and you know what, John? Here's a question. Spotlight was not on Variety's 100 greatest movies of all time, along with many other movies. Have you had a chance to peruse the
No,
list?
I haven't seen it, no.
Oh, wow. Okay, so, I mean, I'm not going to read off the whole list, of course.
Thank you.
But there are definitely some choices, both inclusions and exclusions, that are surprising. There are some that are pleasantly surprising. There are some that it's like, man, I'm like, I love that movie, but does it, like, there's one movie where it plays
100 greatest?
like 100 great, and it's like, in not just American films, not just studio films, 100 greatest movies of all time. And like, there's one that is very high ranking. We're talking top 10, which is definitely one of my top 10. But I'm like, is that really in the top 10 of 100 greatest movies? Like, I buy that it's in the 100 greatest movies.
Are you going to say what it is?
Oh, well, I don't know. I didn't.
Please say what it is.
Okay, it's Pulp Fiction. So Pulp Fiction comes in at number 5, which...
Okay. So to that, I would say, and I'm sure that they go into, some more about it, but it's definitely a movie that stayed in the conversation. It's the... Well, I mean, Reservoir Dogs was certainly a breakout. It was a directorial, breakout, but Pulp Fiction definitely like pumped him up even further on the directing food chain. And it plays
changed
with
movies. I mean, it really did impact the entire industry.
and the independent movie scene for sure. And I feel like it certainly deserves to be mentioned, not necessarily if it's like it's not like it's a cinematic masterpiece, but because of the cultural conversation and because of the way that it did impact the way that movies were made. I think that it certainly should be part of the discussion.
Oh yeah. I mean, I would put it top. I mean, 100 greatest movies of all time in a less subjective list, would definitely expect to see it on the list, if not in the top 50. But to see it at number 5 was surprising as it was to see my best friend's wedding on the list.
Really?
Yeah, and and of course, like, there are explanations, and there's different critics, different journalists who write their takes on these. But in fact, like, my best friend's wedding, there's some interesting ones. There's some ones that I'm like, oh my God, that's so awesome, it's on there. Like, Waiting for Guffman is on there. I fucking love Waiting for Guffman, and that's awesome. But like, there's other choices, I guess, in terms of like filmmaker representation, and like, I think for Oliver, I want to say like Natural Born Killers. Is Natural Born Killers the only Oliver Stone movie on this list? It might be.
Really?
Which, I'm a fan of that movie, but
that's a big swing.
I wouldn't put even of Oliver Stone's movies, if I'm like, how am I going to represent Oliver Stone on this list? It, for me, would either be Born on the 4th of July or JFK.
I would say JFK. I
Probably
feel like JFK has...
Yeah,
it's stayed more in the cultural conversation than Born on the 4th of July has.
it
Even
kind
though,
of defined him. I mean,
yeah, for sure.
Point of reference, Dave.
Yes.
But yeah, so there's some really interesting, like, Scorsese is on here a couple of times. But I think it's like Mean Streets and Goodfellas, which
Mean Streets is an interesting, if there's only going to be two, to have Mean Streets as one of them and not something like Taxi Driver.
Well,
Yeah.
and to have it be Mean Streets and Goodfellas, which is kind of, I feel like Mean Streets was like Scorsese revving up towards Goodfellas. Like, they're kind of, it's kind of like the same. Like, I mean, I don't love Raging Bull like some people, but Raging Bull, Taxi Driver, as you said, is a great movie. But like, I don't think The Departed is on this list.
The Departed. Spotlight.
And then there's other movies that I feel like they're on this list and they're where they should be. Movies like Silence of the Lambs, Fargo, The Apartment.
As soon as you mentioned this list, the one movie I thought of was like, Fargo better be on there. So
Fargo is on here. Some movies that rank pretty highly that you're like, oh, okay. This is one where I thought, I've never seen this ranking on any of these lists, and I so agree with it, is at number 2, The Wizard of Oz.
Okay.
I'm always like, the top 3 you always see are like Godfather, Citizen Kane, and like, I don't know, what's your
But to go with what we've been saying here is that The Wizard of Oz is a movie that has stayed relevant in the cultural conversation since 32? When did that come out?
39.
39. It's 1939. That's been a movie that people still continue to watch to this day. No
they
matter
quote it
how
without
old
knowing
they
they're
are.
quoting it. People quote it. People. It's one of those
We're not in
movies
Kansas anymore.
which is why I look at it and I'm like, if not number 1, which number 1 on the list is Psycho.
Really?
Yeah, really.
Okay.
So I mean,
Gus Van Sant's a great director. I mean, everybody loves Vince Vaughn.
I mean, I don't know if this was like an Anne Heche in memoriam, kind of like, let's throw a bone her way. William H. Macy needs another one on the list.
Right.
So I'm like going
Psycho.
through.
I mean, the funny thing about Psycho is that it's remembered for, I don't know, maybe a collective 20 minutes of the actual movie. And then like the rest of it, it's just like, you don't think about those parts. And I think that if it was a, best movie moments, then maybe I would see Psycho in there. But
the craftsmanship of Psycho, I get it. It's kind of like the craftsmanship. If you are a craftsman, you are looking, a craftsperson, sure. You are looking at Psycho and you're saying, damn, that is how it is done at its best. I'm sure.
Yeah. But I think that as far as Hitchcock goes, I wouldn't even say that that's his best.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a North by Northwest fan.
I was going to say North by Northwest is fantastic. Clearly, he has a lot of amazing ones. I would even put The Birds higher up than Psycho.
Oh, yeah. No, you lost me there. I mean, Rope, I would put, honestly, I
didn't say Rope, it was my favorite. I'm just saying that I would put it up higher than Psycho.
I mean, Rope is fantastic. What's the one with Jimmy Stewart and Doris Day? The one where she sings "Que Sera Sera." Whatever that one is. That one is great. I wish I could. I keep wanting to say "The Man Who Knew Too Much," but I don't think that's what it is. Anyway, so it's worth looking at. Is anything that you're curious about? Like, oh, did this make the list?
Not particularly, because I don't think that this is a list. I have a lot of problems with these lists because, even if they're compiled by critics and experts, there's so much that is always going to be a little subjective. And very. And also it's kind of like, hey, you like what you like. And for some people, these 100 movies may not even appear on their radar. Like they might be so far off from what people are interested in and what really speaks to people. I think that there's, the ones that we talked about that, changed the way that movies are made, or the way that or ones that have stayed in the conversation for such a long time. Maybe the conversation is on there, but ones that have stayed in the conversation could potentially be, worthy of saying, this is the greatest. I think that there's also, what exactly, how do they frame the list? Is it the best movies? Is it the greatest movies?
No, the greatest. And by the way,
the greatest, because I think that the word choice is important.
Oh,
because,
yeah.
I think that the way that you define these words, I think that if the word best is in there, then that's really going to create some problems. Greatest, even though it can mean the same thing as best, can also be up to some interpretation, because great can also mean intensity. It can also mean size. So in that way, Titanic and Avatar are the greatest in sense of mass. Of
Avatar not on the list. Titanic, I believe it is. But actually, what's interesting is what I'm looking at right now, and I'm looking at kind of like a side piece that is basically like a checklist. He's
got a side piece.
Yeah, hey, it's a little, I'm reading that article, but I'm seeing this article too. But in the text of in the title, they refer to it as greatest movies. In the text of the article, they talk about it as their list of the 100 best movies.
So they say best. Okay. So that's kind of where
the list says 100 greatest movies. So it's like, ow, damn it. I banged my funny bone. Ooh. And no, it is not that funny.
I was hoping that we were going to be doing a comedy so that I could say, speaking of hitting the funny bones, but the Sting has some comedic moments. Yeah, so we're always looking for those segues to get in there, but
I don't know. Well, no, here. So anyway, if you're
I'm curious, is the Sting on the list?
No, the Sting is not on the list, and I got to tell you, that stings.
Oof.
It is
more than hitting your funny bone.
Nor is there any movie starring Sting.
I thought you were going to say Robert Redford.
Either the singer or the wrestler Sting. God. Actually, is there anything with Robert Redford on here?
All the President's Men.
I don't think
Legal
so. Anyway,
Eagles.
we should let's continue. But I am going
Sneakers?
to. I will as you.
What about Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid?
I don't think so.
Wow. Okay.
I don't think so.
All right. You take a glance, do a little Command F, see if there's anything that comes up, and I'm going to synopsize the movie The Sting. Johnny Hooker is a young grifter living in 1930s Illinois, working under the tutelage of veteran con artist Luther Coleman. After Luther announces his retirement to Johnny, he advises that he seeks out Chicago flim-flammer Henry Gondorf, which I always thought that he was saying Condor until I actually looked it up and saw Gondorf, to learn how to up his con game. He also has another motive, revenge. Shortly after Luther's announcement, he was killed by associates of Doyle Lonigan, a crime boss from New York. Johnny and Henry team up and gather a group of swindlers to perform a long con on Lonigan, which begins with a high-stakes game of cards on a train and ends with a large-sum bet on the ponies at a fully organized underground operation. It's hard to say who is conning whom, who is on which side, and who is being double-crossed. There's so much more that you can say about this movie, really going in the ins and outs of it, but it can get way too in the weeds, but I'm going to quickly just give a little bit of the cast here because it's a really stacked cast.
Oh, yeah.
Paul Newman is Gondorf. Robert Redford is Johnny Hooker. Robert Shaw is Doyle Lonigan. And for me, I've seen Jaws so many times that seeing Robert Shaw in a suit was really jarring. Robert Earl Jones, father of James Earl Jones, is Luther Coleman. And we have a lot of really awesome people in here who you've definitely seen in other things. Eileen Brennan is in there. You would probably remember her best from Clue. I'm speaking to the audience, not so much to you, Dan. And then Roy Walston. Private Benjamin. There you go. Roy Walston is in there.
Ray Walston.
Sorry. My brain. And somebody who we've talked about a bunch on this podcast, Jack Kehoe is in there.
Yes.
Jack Kehoe, who you'd remember from The Paper. And I was really pleased to see him. I was like,
Wait,
the
Jack
hair.
Kehoe was Jack
There's something about his hair that gives it away. What's that?
From The Paper? I know he's definitely like Midnight Run is what I think of with Jack Kehoe.
He is in The Paper. He is the guy who wants the new chair.
Oh my God, yes. He doesn't look, he looks, I know he usually looks disheveled, but
right, exactly.
He looks even more disheveled in that. Oh my goodness, you're right.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
So it's a great cast. Ray Walston, people would know as Mr. Hand in Fast Times.
And if you're a Ski Patrol fan, you know, Pops and Ski Patrol.
Patrol, of course.
But
we'll get to that when we do our ski movies.
Oh, I can't wait. Also, speaking of people who you'd recognize, in there as Kid Twist is Harold Gould, who you'd recognize as Miles from the Golden Girls, which is great because we just had a Herbert Edelman in Barefoot in the Park. So I love that we're getting all of the significant
the Golden Girls,
significant others of the Golden Girls.
Wow, a theme we didn't know we were doing.
A theme underneath a theme that just kind of started and has gone on.
So we're covering this Sting not only because it's it has its place in cinema history, but this is the final film in a series that we're doing, just kind of about honoring Robert Redford. We've covered some films he's directed and then we have a bunch that he's acted in. And this is, I think, the first time that we're doing something like that where we're getting, I don't know if they were exactly back to back, but The Candidate came out like right before The Sting, very shortly before. So it's interesting to think about Robert Redford as an actor going from role to role and going from, it's like he had done Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid a few years earlier, and so then now he's teaming back up with the same guys again, George Roy Hill and Paul Newman, and coming from a film that's a contemporary piece, at least for the time it was made, The Candidate, to something that takes place several decades earlier. He's still the charming, confident Robert Redford that we all know, but, adapting into a, 1930s Chicago grifter.
Well, and he's what I think what I've just enjoyed in general about the Robert Redford retrospective here is that the
retrospective,
our Redford spective, that the films have been, there's been a variety in them, and we've gone from things like Quiz Show to do a Barefoot in the Park and sneakers.
I love the Barefoot to Sneakers. That was
we've gone from Barefoot to Sneakers and Butch Cassidy, and they're also different. And you think about, I think with the Sting, you really think about Sundance Kid, and I feel like in the Sting he's much more. He feels younger in the Sting. He feels much more.
It's true.
He's more hot-headed and he's on edge. Where in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, he's definitely the one who's more on his guard.
He's the quiet one. Also, it's like the fact that he's so dirty in that one gives ages him a little bit, and he's just more gruff.
He's got that mustache too.
Yeah, and in this, he does have a very youthful energy, and because he's the protege of these seasoned con artists, and so in Butch Cassidy, he's way more established.
Right.
Yeah.
Something that I had read was that the role was actually originally written to be played by a black actor.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that.
So.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, you were saying.
Oh no, and that Gondorf was originally supposed to be. We talked a little bit earlier, really not that much, just to both say that we hadn't seen it, but about the Sting 2. it
Right.
sounds like the original character description in the David S. Ward script was more of a Jackie Gleason type
Oh,
than
yeah.
a Paul Newman type. But then Paul Newman, when he saw this, he really wanted to do it. And,
Oh, okay.
it's funny because also something else that I had been reading about it was that David S. Ward, who, by the way, people might know as the writer and director of Major League.
Yeah.
He was originally going to direct it, but he didn't think it was going to attract like a lot of talent. And I think it was Redford who was like, yeah, we can't really have a first time director doing this. And he was like, yeah, you know what? I think he's right.
Wow. Okay.
So it's like, oh
yeah.
shit, there's some famous people who want to get involved in this.
Yeah, no kidding. It's funny thinking about Jackie Gleason being in The Sting 2, who of course was with Paul Newman in The Hustler.
The Hustler, yeah.
And I don't know, it's kind of like they're just like dancing around each other a little bit. I feel like there's something about their characters from The Hustler like creeping into their real lives and having this battle, this back and forth with the Sting.
Well,
that's
plus the whole
completely
thing where Paul Newman,
in my imagination.
Where Paul Newman was originally cast as Norton on The Honeymooners.
Are you
That is not
bullshitting
true.
me?
That is fake news.
Okay.
Snopes would call that a lie. Because it is.
Yeah. To the moon. Anywhere you want to send me, Paul Newman.
I don't.
No problem.
Yeah. So Anyway, by the way, I've perused the list a few times over. Robert Redford is not represented on here.
Wow.
Nor do I.
There's no
believe-
representation.
There is no. This has no border. At least not a Fort Red one.
No border.
And I don't think Newman is on here either.
Really?
Yeah. I'm
Incredible.
looking through. I'm looking through.
Between the two of them, the films that they have made, just that's extraordinary. I
Like
mean,
no Cool Hand Luke.
I was gonna say no Cool Hand Luke.
HUD. Come on, no,
Strange.
but like my best friend's wedding. Anyway, that's why they make these lists. They want people to talk about them and to get upset and say, yeah, no, but why not? Why this? Why not that? Anyway, so getting back to the Sting, John, do you remember the first time you saw the Sting?
Yeah, it was the other day. I
yes,
know
this
you
was your first-
you just jolted back in your seat. So this is a movie that I have always been aware of. I want to say that I first became aware of it as a child because I don't know if you took them, but our brother Scott and I took piano lessons. And I remember Scott was learning how to play the Entertainer. And I remember the cover of the sheet music saying that it's like, from the motion picture The Sting or something like that. Like there was definitely I knew as a child that the song The Entertainer was associated with the movie The Sting.
You knew that it was composed by Scott Joplin, arranged by Marvin Hamlish. Yep. That's fantastic. I'm sure you are not alone. Hey, if you are listening and if that is how you too first became aware of the movie The Sting, email us ruinedchildhoodspod@gmail.com. Make that subject line like whatever you want.
Whatever you want.
Whatever you want. I don't care.
So so anyway, that's where I became aware of it, but I don't think that it ever interested me as a child, and then it was one of those things where it hadn't happened. And so I was really glad that it was going to happen because I really enjoy movies about, like con jobs and stuff like that. I'll talk about this a little bit more when I go into kind of what I'm like, where I'm thinking for, bringing this back, but it's one of those things where it's a lot of fun for me because, the excitement of like, who's on whose side and how are they tricking this person. And as an audience member, what am I supposed to be looking out for to see what's going on? And also just like getting lost in the movie magic of somebody cheating at cards and winning, where it's just like, well, it's a movie. Clearly, we don't have to know exactly how he switched the threes to jacks, but he did. And you just have to lose yourself in the idea that there's cards up his sleeve or something like that. Like, I don't know.
Well, just the whole idea, and this is, we're talking about Gondorf. I think the whole idea is that this guy always knows more than he's letting on. And, like he lives in the back room of this amusement, this like indoor merry-go-round / brothel that's being run by Eileen Brennan, who's wonderful. And
she's great.
She is, and he's just kind of, he's like always hungover. And he's so unassuming, and you look at him and you realize that, like, oh, he could be like Lonigan if he wanted to.
Right.
Like, he could walk around, because, like, when he puts on the tux and slicks back his hair and, like, clean, polished, and you're like, that is a fucking star right there.
Yeah. Totally.
You're like, and you know what? He's got the talent. He's got the skills. Like, he knows what to do. It's not like when they start talking about, taking Lonigan, that there's like, that there's not a whole lot of like planning and a whole lot of like, what are we going to do? And they get on the phone right away, and they get their team together, and that, like, that's always fun. I think that's something
I love a good assembling a team.
I think we both really, really love that. And I think that other movies where the team is assembled that came after this, and I can't think of any before it, but I do think like Ocean's 11 kind of,
of course,
there's a little homage or a little like, yes, that's how you do it.
Well, maybe the original Ocean's 11. What year did that come out?
Oh yeah, before this. But I also don't remember if there was a whole like getting the team together.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I think that's. I mean, I think of MacGruber. But
they're all wrestlers. I love it.
Yeah, but aside from that, you definitely think about the Ocean's movies, and I think that's where it's also done in a really fun way, where it's like, what I appreciate about the Ocean's movies is that a lot of the times it's like done over like voiceover, or like it's kind of, you hear the narration from a conversation where it's just like, oh, I know the perfect guy for this. And then you cut to like, Scott Conn.
Right. Yeah.
So
that's always what happens in my mind after someone tells me they have the perfect guy for something.
You see Scott Conn in your mind.
I have sometimes said it out loud. I was just like, cut to Scott Conn.
Scott Conn and Casey Affleck getting into some shenanigans. Yeah. So, I think that it's a really fun trope that I really enjoy. Yeah. Seeing the people playing to their skills and everything. I loved the scene where they, convince that guy that they're coming to paint the office, to take over his office so they can, intercept a phone call and do this and that and da-da-da, and like set up this whole thing. And, just love seeing like a plan coming together, and the people that are kind of tricked in the works. And it's fun. Whenever
the movie can make you say, oh, how are they going to pull this off? And then you watch it happen and you're like, okay. And it makes sense. And you're like, yes, I buy that. And like you said, it requires, there's a little suspension. There's a little like, okay, I have to let a couple of things go. But I mean, honestly, and kind of coming back to this was certainly not been my first time seeing this movie. It's been one of my favorites for a long time. I owned it on VHS back in the day, not taped off TV, mind you. And this, I don't even think I stooped to buy a previously viewed copy because I don't think there were any. It wasn't like they were sitting there next to like, 20 copies of Home Alone 2.
Which I watched the other day, 'tis the season, and I laughed my ass off.
Oh,
like,
okay.
Alone in my house, just laughing up a storm. Loving every moment of it. Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. Check it out.
Okay, yeah, no, little film, not a lot of
Sticky
people
Bandits.
Also not on the list,
Brenda
by the way.
Fricker.
Also not on the list.
Okay.
But The Sting has been a movie that I realized, especially I made note of this time around watching it, that I don't know that I always got it completely. I knew that I enjoyed what was happening.
Yeah.
And there were some things like the scene when, the card game on the train when Newman acts drunk and, totally takes Lonigan and, they run it. It's so much fun, that sequence. So you got that and you kind of got the basic gist, or at least I did. And watching it now, there were so many things that I don't think I had picked up on before.
Okay.
And it's something that is so wonderful in the script is it's how the stakes are set up so highly for everyone. And that that Gondorf had conned, what was it, a senator?
Right.
And that was a federal crime. So now it was like the FBI was after him.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff going on in there.
And
I think
Lonigan. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say it starts off from the jump because the very first thing that you see is this con that happens. It just seems like a very standard everyday grift, but it turns out that they grifted this guy who was couriering money for Lonigan or something, and so that the fact that they got him turned Lonigan onto them, which made him kill Luther, and that's what set everything off. And so then that's what turns it into a story of revenge. And it's just like there's so much going on right from the very beginning, and it's one of those situations where like it doesn't matter if you've picked up on everything that's going on. All that you know is like, oh, Luther got killed because of this guy Lonigan and he wants revenge. Like, right. Even if you don't pick up on exactly how everybody was involved, then it doesn't really matter, but it is.
No, it's still fun.
Better. Yeah,
it's still fun, but it's I think that's the experience of watching it at different, not just multiple times, but at different points in your life. Yeah. Like they make the point of that Lonigan, doesn't want to. He doesn't want to risk like losing his territory and having somebody else, because I can't remember exactly how it was set up, but it was set up for Lonigan that that was why he was going to Chicago, I think. And I feel like they set up stakes for him. He's the bad guy. And they set up stakes for Hooker with the cop we haven't talked about, Charles Durning. Yeah. Who's after Hooker, I guess, just for like being a con man. Yeah. And it all, it all kind of, dovetails together at the end.
No, it's a lot of fun. I'm glad that I saw it for the first time as an adult. I don't know if I would have appreciated it as much as a kid, as much as I enjoyed hearing do 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 with a lot of wrong notes, and then our mom yelling wrong note from the other room whenever Scott would hit the wrong note, and so that's my experience, and I'm glad that I did see it now when I'm 39 and can really experience it very fully. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And I can see it and think about them assembling the team and Scott Conn coming in.
I want to do just the opening credits, which I love the opening credits for this. Very few movies can pull off the opening credits where you show a clip of a scene from later on with that actor. Like it's the beginning of a sitcom. And
It's
I
so
love it the
weird.
one with Harold Gould where he's raising his eyebrows and
Yep.
I want to just cut Scott Conn into that and featuring
Just a scene
Scott
from
Conn.
Ocean's 12.
Yeah. It's Scott Conn wearing a catering tux and looking up at the camera and winking.
Yeah.
From a cart. He's putting something under a cart and
But it's also funny because we're talking a lot about the Ocean's movies, which star George Clooney and Brad Pitt, the Paul Newman and Robert Redford, Next Generation, and but it's it makes sense to have these talented, handsome men starring in these movies where it's you just want to take people along on a journey and you get just lost in the fun of it. That's what those actors are for. And not to say that they haven't done other things that have been, fantastic in their own right, but when they're able to do these movies where they're, it's you're meant to just kind of get lost in the fun of their characters, to have these actors be able to kind of just give a little bit of their own personalities into it is a lot of fun.
I think it also helps, especially with The Sting, that they come into it with a pre-existing chemistry. They're a proven commodity as a team, and it's
right.
I don't want to say it's unfortunate that it's kind of unfortunate that they didn't do anything. I mean, they both went on to do a lot of other great work independently, and I don't think that there was a falling out. In fact, actually. I had been reading that the 2015 film that Robert Redford starred in, A Walk in the Woods, he originally wanted to do that with Paul Newman. And based on a memoir, Bill Bryson's memoir about walking the Appalachian Trail with this kind of old estranged friend of his who's kind of in really bad shape. And it turned out that, Nick Nolte ended up playing the role because Nolte and Redford had worked together. And Nolte really fit that role much better than Newman would have. But it's interesting to think kind of what would have been a good third, to round out the trilogy there. It's kind of wondering if we'll ever get another Schwarzenegger DeVito.
We're all wondering.
I mean, you gave us twins, you gave us Junior. Let's round out the third, come on, Jason Reitman, pick up the reins.
I'd say Danny DeVito has never been more popular. He is
the kids love him. I'm not even kidding.
Kids love Danny DeVito. The adults love Danny DeVito. He's hotter than Arnold Schwarzenegger is, I dare say.
No, no, Danny DeVito is immensely popular,
and for good reason. He's really wonderful.
Absolutely.
Also, it's Danny DeVito. You direct something and get your buddy in there, your old pal, your old twin. So Dan, I'd love to know what in the world you would do with the Sting if you had just gobs of money. And your only instructions were, I don't know, do something with the Sting.
You got to make something. All right. Well, okay. So there's a musical. The musical exists. It had been wrong note. The musical was Broadway bound. It premiered at the Paper Mill Playhouse in Melbourne, New Jersey, and it was done by the same people who did The Drowsy Chaperone. Harry Connick Jr. playing Henry Gondorff, which makes sense. That works in the musical, musical world. Totally.
He performed out here in Portland and probably also Seattle maybe a week ago. I saw his name on a marquee.
Yeah, no,
That's all I'm saying.
I don't think anyone's going to argue with the talent of Harry Connick Jr.
Iconic, if you will.
Oh, very nice. So we've got. I mean, what's my idea? I mean, look, they tried a sequel that didn't work. I don't think a sequel would work at all. I think that there is some potential for you could do a prequel. You could tell a prequel story. I don't know that I would necessarily sell it as the prequel to The Sting, but I would consider, like, you know, a character like Gondorf and, you know, what was he doing 20 years earlier, you know?
Perhaps with Luther.
Yeah, exactly. So you're setting up
Gondorf learning from Luther, maybe.
Gondorf learning from Luther. Yeah, perhaps. So I think a prequel would be interesting. I wouldn't necessarily, I would kind of just write it as an interesting story. And it's like, oh yes, these are characters from The Sting. But this is not like the movie. This is not Rogue One, you know?
Yeah.
We're not going to end with Luther going off like, you know, yeah, I got to meet this kid on the East Side. Name's Booker or something like that. You know, and Gondorf is like, I'm going to see if I can chat up this senator playing blackjack over there.
Yeah.
Wink, wink. So I would do a prequel. I would also potentially not do it as a film. I would potentially do it as a novel.
Oh, okay.
And I think if you wanted to continue the stories of Gondorf and Hooker, I do think that novels, or perhaps graphic novels, because this movie is so visual and so beautiful. Like, I have it on Blu-ray and just love looking at it.
Yeah.
So I think a graphic novel could really capture the spirit of the film and the fun. You know, it's also, how many comic books are there just about, you know, grifters and con men in the Great Depression, and, you know, what happens to them during World War II? What happens to you know, I like, let's follow their adventures, but I don't think I would do it on screen.
Yeah, so Hooker is sent off to fight in World War II and ends up conning Hitler into blowing his brains out in a bunker.
Oh, the putting together the team on that one.
Scott Conn is there.
You can't have a con without Scott Conn.
I mean, according to Adam Sandler's The Hanukkah song, James Conn is of the tribe. So
yeah.
So anyway, that is certainly an exploration that's fun to. It's a road that's fun to go down. But anyway, you know, I was thinking, you know, you say a novel, I was thinking a series of more of like, if there's like a more adult, like choose your own adventure type of situation, I think that would be a lot of fun. I think that the aspect of this that we haven't really talked too much about is the questions that loom of just like, oh, is Hooker double crossing Gondorf or vice versa, and this person that, you know, Hooker that works at the diner, you know, Hooker's getting her on his side, but maybe she's on the other side, you know, like all of these things that come up. And I think that there's a lot that could be mined there for like, you know, who to trust and that kind of thing. And I was thinking like, and maybe it's a role-playing game. Like maybe it's some sort of like, I want to say computer game, but that makes me feel like I'm 1,000 years old. But
it's like, you know, big. It's like the game he's playing.
It's, well, I mean, yes, but also more current, at least in its graphics and stuff. But yeah, one of those. No, it's just like 8-bit.
Yeah.
Same. It's actually only 7-bit. They just it's very underdeveloped.
It's just war games.
It's war games. It's text based. Yeah. So
would you like to play a con?
Yeah. So I think that there's a lot that can be done there. It's just like, you see, I don't remember her name, the woman who works at the diner.
Loretta.
You see her. Loretta. You see Loretta, right? Played by Demetra Arliss, not with dollar signs spelling the name, but just with regular S's.
John, I'm sorry, I have to interject, but you just reminded me because ironically, you mentioned Arliss, and you're referencing, of course, Arliss, the show with Robert Wool.
But it's not TV, it's HBO.
Oh, right. Yes. Sorry. Robert Wool plays the Charles Durning role in the musical at the Paper Mill Playhouse.
Does he really?
Yes.
Oh, it all comes back to Arliss.
All comes back to Arliss with the dollar signs.
All roads lead to Arliss with the dollar signs. So, but anyway, it's like you see Loretta walking down the street. Do you like embrace her and say hi to her, or like, do you duck for cover because she's reaching for something in her handbag? Like, there's something like that where, it's more about like reading the signs along the way of just like, ooh, do I trust this person or not? And seeing where things go from there. But I think that in some sort of video game, like a role-playing video game, I think that could be really fun. And also it's like, I'm blanking on what it was even called, but I remember there was this game that was like a very noir type of thing. And I know this is not noir, but like it was like a noir video game that took place in the 30s, and it was more of like Red Dead Redemption or Grand Theft Auto style. But if this one was more of like a role playing type of
LA
thing,
Noire, was that it? Or
I don't even remember, but whatever. But it's like, I feel like that era plays really well, like, in a video game form. And the fact that you don't have any of the modern technologies is what makes it, even more interesting. And I don't know, I feel like those games where it's like finding clues and kind of reading body language and stuff like that, those play really well. And I don't know, I feel like this thing could have a place in that.
It could be fun.
Plus, who wouldn't want to be Robert Redford?
Well, but also, who's to say you are Robert Redford? What if you could choose to be Kid Twist? What if you could choose to be the eerie kid?
There you go. Yeah, I just want to be Ray Walston, painting an office.
I love when he does that, when he's doing like the race, when he's calling the race from the back room, and after he's great. So good at it.
Yeah.
Man, Ray Walston. Ray
Walston.
I mean, like a long time ago.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, not recently.
No.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that there's some good stuff that can come of this. It's not one of those where I think that it would absolutely, ruin people's childhoods if there was something else that came of this. It's just one of those, I feel like it's a piece of media that just kind of like lives on in its own category, where it's just like, yeah, it's The Sting. It's not the greatest movie ever made, but it's a really great movie. I mean, it won a lot of Academy Awards, rightfully so.
Yeah.
I think that it has its place in history, but it's not one where like it's so beloved. It's not like a movie that's quoted all the time or anything. It's one where there's room for people to play with it.
There is. Also, I think the fact that they made this sequel, The Sting 2, which David S. Ward wrote and then really tried to get his name taken off of it, and it was just a huge debacle. And
more like The Stink.
I feel. Oh wow! Oh, was that the Post's headline?
Yeah.
I really hoped to.
Yeah, it made front page news.
I really hoped to have a chance to watch it. In fact, I considered watching that instead of watching The Sting, because it's like, well, if I have time to watch one or the other, why don't I watch the one I haven't seen?
If it was on a streaming platform that I already paid for,
yes,
I would have watched it.
Yes, exactly. So, but I feel like I remember seeing it on TV, in the 80s, catching it on the Channel 9, WWOR, Sunday afternoon cinema, The Sting 2, starring Jackie Gleason. So, because I feel like I have vague memories of seeing it and then being confused with the Sting, being like, wait a second, Jackie Gleason's not in this, and not caring that much because
Yeah.
I was a child. But
Yeah, where's Hollywood heartthrob Jackie Gleason? Who are these dopes?
I want my money back. I thought Jackie, I thought this was, I really thought this was a Jackie Gleason franchise.
Jockey Gleason, is that his brand of underwear?
When I want the ultimate in comfort and support, I wear my Jockey Gleasons. Take me to the moon.
Well,
one of these days.
Listeners, if you have your thoughts on The Sting or any other movie that we've covered on Ruined Childhoods, email us ruinedchildhoodspod@gmail.com. Check out our link tree in the episode's description. Dan, tell everybody what we're covering on our first episode of 2023.
Well, of course, it's January, so anyone who's familiar with us knows that in January we have to cover a Michael Douglas thriller.
Okay, so what happened was we did this unintentionally. We didn't realize that we were turning this into a thing until the first episode of 2022. And Dan was like, "Did you realize that the first episode of every year has been a Michael Douglas thriller?"
Well, yeah, because I think that's when we did the game and
Basic Instinct.
Basic Instinct, and so we're not just narrowing it down to the Michael Douglas. The next words would be even more just erotic thriller. Even though Basic Instinct was definitely the Michael Douglas erotic thriller, perhaps the quintessential Michael Douglas erotic thriller is the movie we're going to be talking about, 1987's Fatal Attraction.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Talk about a movie.
My copy at the library is waiting for me to go pick it up.
By the way, and look, public libraries are awesome no matter what, but I'm feeling a bit I'm a bit upset. I'm feeling a bit of envy here because John, who's in Portland, Oregon, the Portland library system apparently has multiple copies of Fatal Attraction and also has it on Blu-ray, whereas the Seattle Public Library DVD, and there's like 2 copies in the whole system. So anyhow, we'll talk more about Fatal Attraction. That's not even about the movie. That's just about the libraries. Anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing it. It's been a while since I've seen it. And, it's January. It's Michael Douglas. It's hot, steamy, and it's going to be great.
Sure. Well, Dan, and to all of our listeners, Happy New Year. And Dan, as you are playing a game of cards on a train, I wish you a good journey.
Good journey.
Wrong note!